Hey guys, welcome back to the Workplace and Apprenticeship 20 videos. In this video, we're going to look at Lesson 3 from Chapter 2, which is all about histograms. Now, before we jump into our first example, we first need to talk about what is the difference between a bar graph and a histogram. So one of the major differences between a bar graph and a histogram is that there are going to be gaps between each of your bars in a bar graph, and then there's no gaps between each bar in a histogram. Okay. Then the other major difference between a bar graph and a histogram is that bar graphs usually deal with the categories. Remember we talked about that discrete value in our previous video, whereas with histograms it's usually like a range of numbers. So looking at this histogram here, the range would be between 100 to 150. Then we'd have 150 to 200, 200 to 250, 250 to 300, and 300 to 350. And one last thing that we're going to quickly recap is with the number ranges. So say we had 100 to 150. This 100 is the lower value or lower boundary. And then our 150 here is our upper boundary. And then with those histograms, we will include the lower boundary, say in our data point for that little vertical bar, but we don't include the upper boundary. So the data values that are within 100 to 150 might go from say 100 all the way up to 149.9, but not 150, okay? So you include this lower boundary, but you exclude this upper boundary. You might also encounter, say, categorizations or your ranges like 100 to 149. Then, say, you might have 150 to 199. Well, then in this case, there's no overlap, so you don't have to worry about those lower and upper boundaries because then you would just include all of those values. But say when we have that overlap here, say from 100 to 150, 150 to 200, then you would include the lower boundary, but don't include your upper boundary. So let's look at the last example, which is number 2 in your notes. So Ari works as a traffic engineer. He has installed a counter to determine the number of vehicles that use a particular intersection during the afternoon rush period on a given day. His results are displayed on the histogram below. So part A asks, during what time period was there the most traffic? So looking at your histogram, what we have to do is we just have to find the time period that has the highest vertical bar, which in this case, it is from 4:30 to 5 p.m. And just a note here, if we're reading our labels on our horizontal and vertical axes, here we have our vertical, so the number of vehicles is in hundreds. So when we're reading this, we're not going to say that only 6 people pass at that intersection. This means 600 people pass that intersection. Okay, so when looking for the time period that has the most traffic, you just want to see which one has the highest vertical bar. So let's answer a question. So we could say between 4:30 p.m. and 5:30 p.m. has the most traffic. So moving on to part B, approximately how many vehicles use the intersection between 5:30 p.m. and 6 p.m.? So let's go over to that data range. So we find 5:30 to 6 p.m. Then we're going to go all the way up, and what we can notice is that this one here isn't at a very nice value. So what we should do is we should use a ruler and draw a straight line going across to your vertical axis. So I'm just going to grab a straight line here. So I'm going to go from my vertical bars, and then I'm going to go straight across here. So I'm using this little line tool that we can get a nice straight line because my hand is way too, I guess, shaky to get a nice straight line. And then just estimate your values. So you could either roughly estimate, it's a little bit over half, so you might say maybe 460, or you might say 470 people. Just choose one of your values there, as long as it's within, or I'll take a look at it. Say if you're to do this on assignment, I'll take a look at it, and as long as it's within a pretty good estimation, I'll accept it. But obviously, it shouldn't be maybe the low 400s or the high 500s. Okay, so maybe in this case, I might estimate to be maybe 470 people. So you could say approximately 470 people use the intersection between 5:30 p.m. and 6 p.m. All right, so now let's move on to part C. So here part C asks approximately how many vehicles pass through the intersection between 3 p.m. and 7:30 p.m. So here we can notice that we're looking at more than just a half-hour time interval like all of the data values or the data ranges in our histogram was showing. So essentially what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to estimate or find the values of the number of people going through each intersection through each of those time ranges, and then we're going to add up all of those values. Okay? So what I'm going to ask you to do is pause the video. I want you to estimate those values and then restart this video when you found those values, and then we'll go through it together when we're to add it and find a final answer. I'm going to pause this here as well because it'll take a very long time for me to draw those lines. So I will be back shortly with all of my lines drawn so we can estimate those values. 1 hour later. All right, hopefully you guys had a chance there to quickly estimate those values and draw those lines using a nice straight ruler. So let's look at our time interval from 3 to 3:30 p.m. And that one there looks like it's nicely on that number 1 line, which means that there are 100 people that passed between 3 to 3:30. Going to 3:30 to 4 p.m., you can maybe estimate that that one would be approximately 280 people. If you guessed, I think around maybe 270, I would accept that as well. Going from 4 to 4:30 p.m., you might guess it's just a little bit above 3 p.m., so you could guess, say, 310 p.m. or 310 people, sorry. Then looking at 4:30 to 5 p.m., there we had 600 people. From 5 to 5:30, you might guess that there are 510 people. From 5:30 to 6 p.m., as we did state in part B there, we had 470 people. Then from 6 p.m. to 6:30, we had 480 people. From 6:30 to 7:30, we could have, that looks like it's almost exactly on 300 there. Then from 7 to 7:30, that looks maybe approximately 100 and maybe 70 people. So then what we're going to do is we're going to add up each of those values to find out the total number of people that pass between 3 p.m. and 7:30 p.m. So add up each of those numbers. So we had 100, 280, plus 310, plus 600, plus 510, plus 470, plus 480, plus 300, plus 170. If you were to add all of those numbers, you should find that you would get 3,220. So make sure this is here a word problem, so let's make sure we answer this with a sentence like we have been this whole time. So we could say between 3 p.m. and 7:30 p.m. approximately 3,220 people cross the intersection. And that is everything for that video. So if you guys have any questions, please come see me in class or text me on Remind 101. And thank you guys so much for watching.